All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going through a series of videos for MIT's App Inventor 2 as part of the Rankin Technical College Summer Adventure Academy camp. And we're in the middle of our 8th app, and it's a Magic 8-Ball app. And so far, we've created a couple variables, and we did our screen initialization, where we came in and we set all of our images, and we made the submit button enabled and the reset button disabled. So that's what we've done so far. Kind of doing this in a little bit different way. But next, I've decided, good, bad, or indifferent, that what I'm going to do next is the reset button. So when the reset button is clicked, and there's really not a lot we want to do right here, we want to make sure that our image goes back to the original image, which is what it looks like now. We want to make sure that our label that says ask the question below is true. We want to make sure that the text box is visible. We want to make sure that our reset button is disabled and our submit button is enabled. So, not really very difficult. So let's go over to our image first, and we want to set the image. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do. And what do we want to set that to? Well, we want to set that back to 0.ping. That will reset the image back to what it currently looks like, which is this image here. All right, so that's the first thing. Next, we want to make sure we had previously taken, whoops, I don't want to do that. We had previously taken this right here, and when you submitted the question, this disappeared and so did this. So these two things disappeared, so we want to bring them back. All right? And then finally, just like we have here, we want this to be enabled, this to be disabled. So let's finish that one up very quickly. Back to our blocks editor. And again, we want to go to our label, ask question below, this one right here, and we want to set that label ask question below, the visibility of it, to true. In other words, we want it to show. All right. We also want the text box with our question in it. We want its visibility to show. And again, these are things that we are going to be setting to false, and that you'll see in just a minute. All right, finally, we want our submit button to be enabled. So we want its enabled property to be set to true. And then finally, we want the other button, the reset button, we want its enabled property to be set to false. So please, again, be cognizant of what we're trying to do right here. All right? Again, what we're saying is what we want to have happen, okay? What we want to have happen is the image to be set back to our original image, the label to show, the text box to show, our submit button to be enabled, and our reset button to be disabled. I did forget one thing here, and that is when we initialize our screen, we want to generate a random number. Well, let's put that into its own procedure, which we'll call, how about generate random number? All right, and how do we do that? Well, if you remember that one of the things that we have in math is random number. All right, but we can't put that in here. All right, but what we want is we want the result, or our result, all right, to be a random number. Well, what if we made one more global variable here? Up here. And what if we call this random number? down so we can see it. And we set that equal to 0. So when we first start, we've got this random number that we're setting equal to 0. All right? Then we can come in here and we can come into our set random number and we can set it equal to a random number that's between 1 and 0. So let's add our comments. Let's first look at the comment, because I think the comment that's in there, the comment that is in there is incorrect because I just copied it over from what was there previously. So let's look at that. Okay. This holds a randomly generated number between 1 and 100. Simple enough. So this routine, or this method actually generates the random number. Okay? All right. Well, the reason I brought that up is one of the things we actually want to do when we initialize is we also want to call that procedure because we want to make sure we've got a random number. All right? So how do we do that? Well, we come over to procedures, call generate random number. All right? So again, when we first initialize, we will now have a random number. And that random number will be between 1 and 100. We also can come up with another variable here. So let's duplicate that. And instead of calling this one random number, let's call this one we've got it already, image number. So I don't need that. So we also need to make sure that once we ask the question, that we also generate an image number. All right, so when we submit a question, we want to make sure that we set that image number into, so it's going to look like this, in other words. So let's take this procedure and let's duplicate it. We'll put it up here, and instead of between 1 and 100, it'll be between 1 and this is interesting. Okay, I was going to put 15 here, but it's possible that the number that gets generated is 12, and we don't have an image 12. So I'll have to fix that in just a minute. Let's just call this question submitted. Question submitted. I don't know what's going on here. Submitted. All right, and instead of setting the global random number to that, we want to set our image number to that. And we don't need that anymore. So we've got two different routines. This one will generate our random number between 1 and 100. This one will generate our response. In fact, rather than question submitted, well, how about this? Generate response. All right, I like that a little bit better. All right, so we will have that situation where I'm trying to figure out a good way to do this, and to me, the easiest way to do it would be like this. All right, that is, if I come back to where I have these images, and since I don't have a 12, I'm going to take image 15 and I'm going to make that image 12. All right, right, so now I have those. So what I'll do then is to go back to my designer, and for my images, this number 15 I'm going to delete, and I'm going to upload image 12. Now I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. That's good, because now I can come back in my blocks editor and change that from a 15 to a 14. All right, so as far as I know, the only thing that's left is to actually write my code that's going to be handled when we call the submit button. So we've got our initialize, we've got our reset. All right, this will generate the random number. And this will generate the associated response. So what's left is for us to come in and put in our code for our submit button. All right. And even though we're only at 11 minutes, I think this is a good breaking point. So I'm going to break right now, and in the next lecture, I will finish the code for the submit button.